All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Atoma. Here we are. It is a new month, May 1st, and we got more Bible studies for you guys. As always, I hope you guys take out your Bibles, spend time with the people you can, even though it's quarantine, and study the text with us. Today we have Pastor Nick Ruud with us. He made the feature. I actually like bringing in some guests on it. It's actually so fun. That's what I like about the Zoom, the Atoma. There's no limits. Nick, you want to tell them a little bit, like where are you at?
My name's Nick. Yeah, you already said that. I guess I didn't have to share that. But I live in Arizona, pastoring down here. It's warmer here than it is for probably wherever you're listening from. I'm just gonna guess.
Thanks, Nick, for joining us. And so today, the text, we're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 32. And I'm just going to pray, and then we'll get into the text. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for another day. Thank you for a new month. Lord God, as the world is continuing to change and things are happening, I'm just thankful that we're able to wake up another day. Please bless us. I pray that we're able to take something from the text, from the word that you breathed in, and I pray that we're able to apply it to our lives. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so the text today is Genesis chapter 32, verses 22 to 32. Genesis chapter 32, verses 22 to 32, a very classic story. And so we'll begin reading. Verse 22, it says, "The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else he had.
Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip. And the socket of Jacob's hip was a joint as he wrestled with him.
Then he said, 'Let me go, for the day has broken.' But Jacob said, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.' And he said to him, 'What is your name?' And he said, 'Jacob.'
Jacob then named the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face. He said, 'Yet my life has been spared.' The sun shone on him, and he passed by Peniel, limping because of his hip. That is why still today the Israelites don't eat the thigh muscle, and that is at the hip socket, because he struck Jacob's hip socket at the thigh muscle." That sounds like a delicious meal. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never had the thigh muscle meat. Such an interesting text. And so at this time, we usually go over observations, what we've seen in the text. The first thing that jumps out to me, I just got to say, Jacob wrestling with God, like what in the world? Like I always thought that story was so funny, but I know it had some heavy applications. But I always thought it was so funny because I have an older brother named Kofi, and shout out to my bro. And we used to wrestle like crazy. Like we used to watch WWE, WWF. We had the video games, and so me and him, we just loved wrestling. And like it was bad. Like during like my mom tried to do like Friday night vespers in the house of the 3 of us, we'd be like trying to fight each other, or like we had a setup where I had like a bed, and then we had another mattress on the floor, and we'd like do like moves off of it, like onto the bottom mattress. It was dangerous. But the thing about this is like the wrestling, is that we would both leave kind of damaged. But I think it's interesting is that in this story, Jacob leaves damaged. The other person, who's God, doesn't leave damaged, realistically. But he still says his life was delivered in it. Yeah, so what else? What jumps out to you guys in the text? What stands out to you?
You know, I'm not sure, but I think we missed 2 verses. I'm being serious. I think we missed
Israel one.
Yeah. So 28 and 29, I believe. Should I just read them real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, For you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked, saying, Tell me your name, I pray. And he said, Why is it that you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. And then Nick read the last four there.
My bad.
No, you're good.
I wasn't following along close enough.
That's even we learn. I feel like I have an kind of with what you were saying, Ben. I have an anecdote for this because we were closer friends before when we used to work at summer camp. But I have a friend, Craig Davis. We used to wrestle. Every time there was a break at camp, we would wrestle. And Craig actually pulled my hip out of its socket. Actually did that. He's this big, I don't know how tall he is, Nick. Maybe 6'2", something like that, or just something like that. He's just a guy, super
strong.
And he just straight up grabbed my leg, wrapped both of his legs around my leg, and then pulled up on my body, something like that. To just
oh my!
Pulled my hip straight out of my socket, and I was like, oh, whoa, whoa. And I don't know how it really happened, but my hip went back into place when I stood up because I tried to stand on the foot on the leg and it just pop went back in, and it was so painful, excruciatingly painful. And so hearing this story and thinking about this story, every time I think about it, I just get a little bit of a pain on my right hip because the rest of that summer was pretty tough because I really liked water skiing, and it popped out of place during that too. Because once it gets out of place, it's really easy for it to pop back out later.
Wow.
And so I'm just thinking in context, Israel now must have lived with that reminder for a very long time. That's something that it's just a one-time thing that pops out. It's going to be a pain that. So not only is he getting the new name, but he's getting that he's reminded of what he did wrestling during this time, because this is a pivotal moment in history, Christian history, and also Jewish history. So that's something that they remember. Nick read that, therefore that's why they don't eat that muscle, which is on the hip socket, because it's something important for them to remember. So every kid growing up, imagine them hearing that story and being like, oh my goodness, no, I don't want that to happen to me.
Yeah.
I think for me, the thing that stands out is in verse 30, when it says, so Jacob calls the place Peniel because he saw the face of God, and yet my life has been delivered. Because he knows, or he recognizes how sinful he is, how bad his flesh is. And after seeing the face of God, there's no reason why he should be living when he compares his flesh to the greatness, the majesty of God, the character of God, and being able to say, I was delivered in that moment. And he saw the face of God. I think I just wish I could experience that, a moment where I felt so close to God and I saw his face and felt delivered.
For me, in that same verse, something stands out, and I'm going to kind of riff off of what you were saying, Alex, but the fact that Jacob, he has a habit of renaming things. We see him renaming this place that he's had this experience with God. But when his son is born, I think it's when Esau is born, or not, wait, that's his twin brother. What am I saying? No, his Benjamin. When Benjamin's born, his wife, Rachel, right, he's got the whole sister wives thing going on, but his wife, Rachel's kind of on her deathbed during this whole experience. And, she's not doing so well. And so when she names their son, I think this is a couple chapters later, maybe in Genesis 35 or 36, but when she names the son, she names him Weak Eyes, essentially, because this is she's super jealous of her sister, and she's I don't know. That's not the first one. What's the one she names? Oh, Great Difficulty, because she's having a really hard time having this kid.
Son of her pain.
She's on her deathbed, and what is I forget what she names it. Ben. She named her son Ben-Oni.
Ben-Oni.
Yeah, he's the son. Yeah, Ben-Oni, and that means, what does that mean? I'm forgetting.
Son of my pain.
son of my pain. Yeah, because she's going through this really rough time. And then Jacob has this innate ability to look past the present moment and like be able to rename. He names them son of my right hand, like son of blessing. Renames the son, your name, Benjamin, right? This beautiful name that means that has, he looks through the current and nasty situation that's going on. I mean, he's losing his wife. He can't be more, upset and depressed about that, I'm sure. But he can look through that and see that, listen, there's with the pain that's going on, there's something beautiful that can come of this, and it's not always going to be this way. And I see this happening here too, where he's renaming a site of his pain and of his suffering, and he's giving it something that means like, this is where I've seen God. This is where I've seen God. I'm looking past my current pain and finding something beautiful out of it. And I love that about this Jacob character, that he has this innate ability to look past his present situation and recognize that something great is coming, or something great will come of the nastiness that's gone on.
Wow. That actually strikes a question that I was thinking of asking, but it's a good leadway into it. We see that Jacob encounters God, wrestles with God, and then God changes his name. There's a lot of sermons on this, there's a lot of talk about this, but I want to know you guys' opinion. Is it necessary? Like, what's the significance of that? Like, do we change when we encounter God? Like, how much does that change us? Like Jacob left changed, new name, new walk. Like he was changed. And what does that have to look like for us? Is it like something that has to happen? Does it look different for everybody? What is the process of that change? But like, there's something that happens when you encounter God that changes you. What do you guys think?
I think it's very evident in Jacob's story, like the change that he goes through, just because when he starts his life, he's holding on to the hill of his brother. When right before he runs away, he steals the inheritance of his brother. Like, he was a very sneaky character. When he's trying to marry Rachel and Leah, and he says so he's trying to leave from his father-in-law's house, and he says to his father-in-law that like, every cow that's born green is going to be mine. And he makes it so that every cow born that year is green. He's like, every sheep that is purple is mine. And he makes it that every sheep born is purple. Like, he was very sneaky, and that's just the kind of character that he was. But in that moment, when he is changed, renamed, new walk, I think one of the things that I find fascinating about his changing process is that even after he's had his hip dislocated, come out of the hip socket, and God says to him, let me go, he says he's made a decision that, no, I'm not leaving this place the same way that I was before. I'm going to leave this place blessed. So what I take from that, for me personally, is that when you encounter God and you are going through a change, you also have to want that change for yourself, right? God is not going to beat you to a pulp until you are changed. He's not going to use scare tactics. He's not that kind of God, right? He's the kind of God that gives us a choice. And so when he comes into presence with you, when he makes his appointment with you and it's time to talk it out or to hash it out, he essentially gives you the choice. And so in that moment, Jacob made a decision that, even though I feel this pain right now and I see this pain right now, like Nick said, like, Jacob saw past the pain. He saw past the situation, and he saw that he wanted and needed a blessing to become a changed man. So I think even for us today, we have to choose to want to change, so that God can do that work in us.
Yeah, there are two things that I thought of immediately when you asked that question, Ben, and I'm thinking about as Alex has been talking. And randomly enough, when I was 4 and about to be 5, the principal of my school decided that it'd be a good idea for me to start because they didn't want to wait for me to wait another year because I'd be kind of behind or whatever. So I started there when I was like almost 5. I think it was like 2 months later I was going to be 5. And so they let me start. And I remember walking into my kindergarten classroom and they wrote 2 names on the board. And in front of me, I was faced with this decision. A 4-year-old kid that like doesn't know like, you know, what colors are yet is looking at this board and I'm choosing my name. I have a middle name. And it's funny, my middle name is Alex. So like, my name, like it's Alexander, but my name could have been Alex right now. And I feel like, I don't know why, like well, maybe it's just because I've lived with it for so long, but Peter really fits me. I feel like that's an identity I've had. Like in certain times, I felt like the definition of my name, even like biblically, like the rock has like really fit with me, or even Peter's character. I think we talked about in a few episodes before, like it's something I really identify with. And so that's been really meaningful and important to me. But at the same time, it's strange because my mother's side of the family that lives in California, whenever I visit, they're like, "Oh, hey, Alex." And so like it's just like, it's like reminding me of different times, I guess. It always reminds me of that story, looking at the board, those 2 names, a 4-year-old faced with that decision to basically decide his identity. Because I mean, if my name had been Alex, tons of things would have been different. Tons of things. Like maybe even opportunities would have been completely different. I probably wouldn't be where I am right now.
You'd be living in Philadelphia, man.
Yeah, probably. I'd probably live in Philadelphia.
Just saying.
You know?
Just saying.
Yeah, and so like that's one thing that just popped out at me, just thinking about like identity, how much a name really means and changes in your own life. 2, there's a guy, he's an actor that I know, and he actually played the character of Jacob and Israel on a stage, and he's actually on this chat with us right now. Nick Ruud, he at a summer camp, he played a character.
Did
You did. You know, remember, like, he is real, and then we had that whole, like,
yeah.
he played like, he had a limp.
We don't need to talk about that, though, you know?
And everything. No, but I feel like the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I think the culmination of that story was really important. And I don't know if you remember like the culmination of the story, Nick. Like,
no, I've repressed all those memories, bro. They're gone. Yeah.
It was just a really beautiful moment, and I remember like all the kids that were there at summer camp, they were so engaged with the end, and even when the name change happened, like, because there was a story going on with the Bible story, like that's usually how it happens at summer camps, and when we got to that point where like there was the reveal, you know, like, oh, like he is real, like there was the people that were talking about the story of Jacob, they were like realizing, oh wait, God is real, God is something important, and God changed this guy's whole life, his identity, by giving him a new name and having him do all these new things in his name. And that was something just so meaningful. And like names have power. It's really incredible. And I think that's something like that's really important in these texts here.
And just going off of what you're saying about the importance of name and the identity that's attached to it, again, that's part of Jacob's story and the change that he goes through, that God renames him from being called heel because he was holding on to his brother's heel when he was born, and renames him to one who strives with God. Like, so it shows you that he goes from being named based on a bad circumstance to being named to one who walks with God, one who talks with God, one who daily is with God. Like, so just the change in his name shows how his character and his identity shifts in that moment.
Yeah. My next question that really came to mind, especially Alex, you were talking about the importance of our like choice to seek a blessing. And I think that's huge because God gives us that autonomy. He wants us to have that ownership. He doesn't force us, you know. Even when I think about it, like, you know, it's like a man wrestled with him. Who started the wrestling? That's what I always think about. Like, I wonder if like it was like God approached him and Jacob was wrestling out of like he didn't want to get run up on at night, right? Like he got like nervous. And so he started wrestling the guy. And I guess I was thinking, I'm like, did God really just jump him? Or like Or did Jacob just react because he saw a guy come at him at night? Right? Like God probably would have never intended that. It's kind of interesting. I think like I wonder if like that was never the intention of God. But anyways, I think that there is a common theme in our life that we face, that when we encounter God, when we're seeking God and we are seeking a blessing, that we will be injured in one way or another. I think that comes. It doesn't look the same for everyone, but injury comes. But the choice to continue to hold on despite the injury, that's the hard part. And my question to you guys is, how can we still hold on even when we're injured? You know, like what is it that we have to do to hold on despite injury, to hold on for a blessing, hold on to see God do something for us, even when we feel like things are being injured around us, even when we feel injured?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like the injury could be, you know, a lot of different things. And I guess in my life, I see it as change. Because like I like to think of myself as someone who's really adaptable. And I feel like I've been that in my life, but I've only been that because God has allowed that to happen in my life. I'm thinking specifically about like an injury to my ego at the end of my senior year at Walla Walla. Like I didn't have a job lined up. Like I just didn't. The one that I had thought was going to work just fell through. Like it was not a good fit at all. I was looking at something in California and it's just like, it wasn't happening. So I just like, I was injured and I flew to Maine to work at a camp. Wasn't sure what was going to happen there. And still like in the back of my head, I had this like, man, maybe you weren't good enough for those conferences. Maybe you just like the interview you had was not good, or maybe you're just not good enough as a pastor. Maybe you're just not like, I had all these thoughts like in the back of my head, just weighing me down. And I wasn't like, I was looking straight down. I wasn't looking up. Like there were so many different things that were happening at that time, and I found the perfect opportunity here in Maine. I'm so happy here that I took that. But that's the thing, like Ben, like God always turns the pain or the change into something beautiful if we allow ourselves to look at it that way. And I know that's probably impossibly hard to see for a lot of people when it comes to things like death, or even right now during a crisis like this. What's the bright side? The world is forever changed because of what has happened. What's the bright side in this? But God asks us to trust. God asks us to hold on through that injury, whatever it looks like in your life.
Nick, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think that change is a strange and an interesting thing when we're thinking about, when I look at the entire like biblical meta narrative, and it's this grand story on a macro and a micro scale of going from old to new, always old to new, old to new, old to new. I'm going to give you new hearts, new minds,
Yep.
A new song, right? And it goes on and on and on, old to new, old to new. And I wonder though, what you've probably read like Pilgrim's Progress and stuff like that, and the incredible journey this individual has, this main character has, on the way to, you know, the paradise or the heaven or whatever you want to call it. But it's like sometimes we hear about change and you're talking about pain, and I think like, man, the refining fire we hear about, I've always been curious, like what is, like change is going to hurt, like no matter what. I don't know about you, but like I grew up a lot where we moved a lot. So we would move from place to place. It was just, you know, whenever dad lost a job or got another one, it was just kind of, let's go to the next spot. And so being uprooted so many different times, you know, that starts to create like pain, all those different changes and things like that. And yet there's like been an intrinsic beauty that's come because of that. It's like it's refined me into an individual that I guess adapts easily, and I appreciate that about myself. And I've always just wondered in the spiritual journey, in this journey of faith that we go on as Christians, or whatever faith tradition you may be a part of, is that something that is more change actually a good thing? Like, is not getting comfortable and complacent where you are a good thing? Because if our Pilgrim's Progress friend had just stayed, 2 miles outside of town for the rest of the book, like, first of all, it wouldn't have been a very interesting story. But secondly, you weren't going anywhere. I mean, he would have needed like a cable car to get all the way up to the top, or a helicopter or something like that. And it's not to say that God doesn't offer those options at one point or another. I'm a firm believer that God's grace is way bigger and way better than any of us could ever imagine or even dream or hope for.
Amen.
So I'm not worried about anybody necessarily, but what are the benefits we gain then on this journey, where change is going to be happening constantly, no matter what? And if it's not, is that a good thing? I don't know. Right now, it feels like not a lot is changing in my life. The last month and a half, I've kind of like been sitting in my apartment, go for a run, and then maybe come to the church to grab a book or two from the bookshelf. It's like go to the food bank to help out once a week. It's like, that's it, right? There's not a lot of change going on in my life right now. But thinking about, what you're saying, the world is changing, even though it doesn't, I feel really stagnant right now. Like I'm kind of stuck. But the world is changing. And maybe that's a good thing. As scary and as sad and as much fear as something like this has caused. I totally agree. I think there will be beautiful things that come of it, even if it's just pushing a few of us outside of our comfort zones. Maybe none of us will have FOMO after this. I don't know.
Definitely less.
No, like I think what I'm really reflecting on what change means and what the necessity of change is, and how change comes regardless, and it'll hurt, but like the concept of still holding on despite change. I think because God doesn't call us to stay still. I think that's like a huge theme I've seen in the text. Like God never calls anyone just to be the same forever. Because I think, especially since Eden, like he's trying to restore us. And so until we're there, we'll always be changing. And we're always going to have to be being reformed and just to be refined. And so change is something that's necessary. But I think I still just like, what tools what do we have to do to get through that change, to get through the fire? Like, what do we have to hold on to so that when that happens, we don't bail out when change comes? Now, when that happens, we don't even, sometimes, it's one thing to stay the same, but sometimes it's easy to even digress, to go backwards. What do we have to do to keep moving into change as we have 5 minutes left?
Well, think about the story. What assurances, or like, what did Jacob think was going to happen at the end of this? He was just a beggar. He was there like, God, no, I'm not going to let go unless you bless me. I'm not going to let go. And God could have just been like, bro, like, I just popped your hip off. Like, bye. You could have done that. And Jacob would have just been laying there with his, his hip all messed up. But Jacob had no assurance. So what was he thinking during that time? But sure, he knew that there was a God that was strong, that was powerful. He's heard that from his fathers and his ancestors. But what assurance did he have that this was all going to work out? I don't think he really did. And I think that's like a big part of it. Like that's the amazing part of it. That the perseverance pushed, like his perseverance allowed him to push through and receive like the best blessing, change, pain, injury of his life. And that's really scary to me to think of that.
It's like blind faith that I don't even like that term, because what is faith? Faith is uncertainty, right? I mean, you can't have faith. Either you know or you don't know. And if you don't know, you have faith that you think you know. So like he has this blind faith or just regular everyday faith that something good will come of the situation. And maybe that's when we're going through change, it's to realize that it's uncertain. Our future is uncertain. And I don't think, I don't care if you're going through coronavirus or any part of life. Life is uncertain. My wife had her cousin about a year ago. He was changing a tire. He's like 25, changing a tire on the side of the freeway, and just gets life's over like that. I mean, you think you've got 75 years in front of you, and it's just over. Life is uncertain, but I think that when you're talking about trying to move from old to new, to make that progress forward, it is about having this blind, sometimes idiotic faith in like, I'm going to become better because of this, and my situation will improve, and the situation of those around me will improve because of this thing that I'm going through, whether good or bad, because we don't know, but we can have hope, and we can trust, and we can have that blind faith that seems so stupid at times, but yeah, maybe that's half the fun. That's half the journey.
And I think the blind faith comes in like because you don't know what is coming next or where this change is going to lead you. But one thing that you do know for certain, just like Jacob knew for certain, is the kind of God that you serve. So Jacob, like Peter mentioned, had heard from his ancestors, from his father, like how great God is, right? And how even though Jacob had this history of being like a fishy kind of person, in the next chapter when he's meeting his brother, his brother asks him, who are all these people? And he says, these are the children that God saw fit to give me. So you know that in spite of your past, God has still blessed you, God has still walked with you, God has still done amazing things for you. So even though you don't know where this current change is going to lead you, what's going to happen next, but you know the kind of God that you serve, the kind that makes promises and keeps his promises.
For sure. I'm gonna close up at that point. At that time, we're running out of time on the Zoom. It's important that we know that in this life we're gonna have to wrestle. In this life we're gonna encounter change. But the one thing that I pray for everyone who's listening, for all of us, is that we never let go of God in that time. Despite the pain that comes, despite the injury, despite the change, despite whatever happens, that we hold on to God, knowing that he's going to bless us, knowing that there's change might happen, but good will come from it, knowing that we can look at a situation and name it in a positive way because God is that type of God that will bring goodness out of it. Thank you guys so much for joining Atoma. Hope you guys all have a great new month and stay blessed.